Cecil, good evening. Cecil Ryan.
So, good evening, Jamalai. Welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah, Jayabad is trying to connect, but he is not connected.
Okay,
so he's calling me again and again.
Are you waiting for some more? Are you waiting for some more?
We are going to start, Father.
Okay.
It's still Ryan.
Good evening, Jamalai.
Good evening. How are you?
Sugama. பாஸ்வேர்டு செல்லுல தப்பா கொடுத்துக்கறாங்க.
ஆமா.
கடைசில 5 இல்ல அதுல.
ஓகே ஓகே ஓகே.
86559 மட்டும் கொடுத்துக்கறாங்க. இவ்வளவு நேரம் I was trying.
No, you log on to the to WhatsApp, and from there you click the link.
Yeah. From the WhatsApp, I could find only without 5, the last number. I have been struggling so far. I could not get it open.
Okay.
Now at last, through cell phone, I opened this Zoom and their number was different.
Okay, okay.
வணக்கம். பரிமளம்.
பரிமளம், good evening, good evening.
வணக்கம்.
வணக்கம். சுகமா?
Good evening.
யாரு?
Brito Vincent.
Good evening.
How are you, Cecil?
Good evening.
It's a reunion of culture and communication.
Yeah, that's right.
Good evening, Ryan.
One more person is missing.
Good evening, Ryan. Good evening, Ryan.
Alex, we tried to say Alex. I think his connectivity is, he has a problem with connectivity.
Okay, okay. What happened to Jayapati?
Jayapati, I think Jayapati will be joining.
happened, Irudayaraj? Anybody? It's not.
He's coming. Just one.
Albert, Cecil, you are in 2 connections.
Jamal, I could see only one picture here, only one video here.
There is one more. Maybe in your computer, laptop, and mobile.
Okay.
Or in 2 emails we have opened.
And let us see. Is that okay now?
Yes. All right. No. Still you are there. There are 2 faces.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Are you getting my connection?
Yes. We can hear you, Father.
Can you switch on the video? Can you switch on the video, Father?
Yeah. Video is not on. Okay. Check up where the video.
This is Father P.J. Joseph, present director of Chitrapani.
Yes.
Yes, Father, we hear your voice audio, but the video is not there. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank God you at least you are coming in via audio.
No. Video is coming now.
Yeah. Calcutta is lockdown. That's why you are
Yes, it is.
Hi, PJ.
Can you come
Yeah,
back?
we are able to see you.
Oh, fine. Okay, fine. Hello, thank you. Yeah, now I can get you. Hello.
That's clear.
Yeah. Thank you. It has taken a long time to get online. I logged out.
PJ, how are you?
Keeping fine.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Anybody?
It has taken some time to come online because some network problem here.
Okay.
Now it seems to be okay, and I am only using my mobile because the computer Wi-Fi gone. Everything is shut out.
Yes, Jaypati is there.
Yeah, Roberto.
Good evening, Jay.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jaypati.
We have to go to the participants.
Okay, good evening, dear participants. I'm sorry, there was some technical issues. Many were saying that password is incorrect. Password is removed now. Please tell your friends, those who would like to join, they can click the link and join. I will ask the host to remove the password for this event.
That's why that was a problem.
So we start the program. It's already 6:15.
Okay.
We will start this program, memorial meeting and tribute to Father Gaston Roberge with a prayer song.
There. You sit there, don't go. There we can.
Good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
The Loyola College Viscom Department and the Chennai Province, newborn Jesuit Chennai Province Communication Commission jointly organized this memorial meeting for Gaston Roberge, who died last month. Father Gaston Roberge was born and brought up in Canada. He joined in the Society of Jesus when he was 21 years old. His maternal uncle, who worked in Sri Lanka and India, narrated about Indian culture, the way people lived their life in India and Sri Lanka. That really inspired Father Gaston. From then on, he took keen interest in knowing more about India and Indian stalwarts like Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, etc. he started reading Gitanjali in a very young, early age. Then, after a long journey, he arrived in Kolkata in 1961. Father Roberge said for him, just coming from one country to another new country by boat with a passport or a visa, landing on a ground of city does not translate actually into coming into a different country. Rather, you have to know the people in order to arrive at a new country. So he began to know Indian culture, Indian way of living life, and so on. After landing in Calcutta, he established Chitrabani in 1971. This is the first media center in Eastern India. Today, it is an august institution teaching technique of cinema, film appreciation, and other courses in cinema, including an annual festival screening documentaries, short films in competition by the students of the institution. Father Gaston has authored more than 35 books on media-related topics, Indian cinema, and spirituality. To quote important two books, To View Movies the Indian Way and The Indian Film Theory, Flames of Sholay. These are books popularly known, several others books also. He has given a series of lectures on Indian cinema and conducted a number of training programs in various parts of India. Many Jesuits from southern provinces, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra, Karnataka, took their training in Chitrabani, and some of them are here in the virtual mode. Father Gaston is not with us now, but his spirit is with us. And that's why we have gathered to pay homage and tribute to him. Today we have gathered in this virtual reality for a memorial lecture, along with the memorial meeting with a sharing of different people. Many people associated with him have come forward to share their fond memories with him. On behalf of the Visual Communication Department of Loyola College and Communication Commission of Jesuit Chennai Province, I extend a very warm welcome to everyone. Especially, I express my hearty welcome to Father Provincial Jabamalai Irudayaraj, who is present in this meeting. And I take this opportunity to welcome Father P.J. Joseph, the present director of Chitrabani, which was started by Gaston. He will talk about biographical sketch and his milestones in his ministry. I also extend a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Professor Venkatesh Chakravarti is connecting us with from Hyderabad. More about him, he will be introduced a little later. He will be talking about the legacy of Father Gaston Roberge, its historical and social context. I also welcome Father Francis Jayabadi, who is in Trichy St. Joseph's College. He has a long association with Father Gaston. He will share his memories. I extend a warm welcome to Father Myron Pereira, former editor of Jeevan, was also admirer of Gaston. He must be the senior person today in this virtual mode, being with us. Hearty welcome to Father Myron. I also extend a warm welcome to Father George Ponadat. He is not able to connect, but he has sent his video message. He was former director of EMMRC in Kolkata. He has shared his views through video. I also extend a warm welcome to Professor Dr. Josephine Joseph from Mysore. She has invited him for several lectures, guest lecture, seminars, workshops in Chennai, Madras University. Welcome, dear ma'am. I also extend a warm welcome to Brito Vincent, who was a student in Chitrabani. He stayed more than a year to learn media-related courses in Chitrabani. I extend a very warm welcome to Father Irudayaraj of Andhra Province. He is working in Vijayawada Loyola College. He was also one of the students in Chitrabani. So all the professors, learned people, scholars, students are welcome to this memorial meeting and memorial lecture. Father Gaston has inspired many people, and that's why we are paying tribute to him. Let us continue to be inspired by his work, by his books, by his thoughts on Indian cinema. Let us also walk in his footsteps. With these words, I close my welcome speech. We'll move on to with the program. Dear participants, I now welcome Father P.J. Joseph, the present director of Chitrabani, to share his memories and give a biographical sketch of Father Gaston Roberge. Over to Father P.J. Joseph from Kolkata.
Thank you. Dear friends, a big thank you to the Department of Visual Communication, Loyola College, Chennai, and the Communication Commission of Jesuit Chennai Province for organizing this memorial meeting and tribute to Father Roberge. Today we are here not to mourn the death of Father Roberge, but we are here to celebrate his life, a life lived to the full, a life lived in and through media. It was a life lived for God and his people. He has left for us a legacy that will speak with vitality long after he has returned to his eternal home. It is a legacy of professionalism, commitment, and intellectual integrity. He had imbibed the Ignatian idea of magis fully and implemented it in all what he did. There was a time when Father Gaston Roberge was a catchword that exemplified authority in the world of film and television. He was associated with a number of prestigious institutions like Film and Television Institute of India, Pune, Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, Kolkata, National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, Jamia Millia Islamia University, New Delhi, Calcutta University, Jadavpur University, Rupkala Kendra, Kolkata, and many others. He was always curious about something, and his 31 books, innumerable articles, and numerous audio and video presentations reveal
Father, your mic is muted. Please, yeah.
Hello.
Yes, now audible.
Okay. Gaston Roberge was born in Montreal, as it is already mentioned, in Canada in 1935. He obtained a BA degree from the University of Montreal in 1956. He then joined the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, at the age of 21. After his initial religious studies and philosophy, he came to Kolkata on 15th October 1961. In 1970, he received an MA degree in theater arts focusing on film from the University of California in Los Angeles. During his stay there, he also directed a 26 minutes documentary film on primary education and prepared innumerable radio programs for Radio Pacifica. In 1970, he started, as it is already mentioned, a social communication center in Calcutta called Chitrabani as an extension service of St. Xavier's College, Calcutta. The objective of the center was to develop professionalism and scholarship in the media and to spread a mass media culture that helps people to integrate the communication media into their cultural lives. In 1970, again, Chitravani, which at that time meant Father Roberge, set up the first non-commercial sound recording studio at St. Xavier's College for high school students. Another pioneering venture was the setting up of a non-commercial photographic darkroom at St. Xavier's College in 1972. Then in 1978, he started an open syllabus diploma in social communication. Father Roberge pioneered cinema studies, which is the forerunner of media education today, in the country in 1970, with the first film study group having a 9-month initiation to film appreciation, followed by 12 weekly lectures with 135 students. Later, a 15-week course on cinema at the Xavier Institute of Communication, Bombay. That was perhaps the first systematic course on cinema in India. In 1986, he started the Audiovisual Research Center, AVRC, of St. Xavier's College, which was upgraded to Educational Media Research Center, or EMRC, in 1991. Now it is called EMMRC, or Educational Multimedia Research Center. And Father Roberge was the director of both Chitravani and EMRC till 1996, when he was called to be the executive secretary for social communication at the Jesuit headquarters in Rome. He was awarded a research grant later by the Canada Council for a study of Eisenstein's Ivan the Terrible, and went to Moscow in that connection in 1973. Roberge conducted a course on Satyajit Ray himself on cinema at Loyola College, now called Concordia University, Montreal, in 1973. In 1980, he started Radio Veritas Asia Bengali service, which has celebrated 40 years this year. And during his long years of 26 years of being the director of both the centers, he also was holding several posts, some of which I would like to mention today. He was a member of the governing body of the State Institute of Educational Technology of the Orissa government. He was a member of the management board, Jamia Millia Islamia Mass Communication Research Center, New Delhi. He was a guest lecturer to the Film and Television Institute of India, Pune. He was also a member of the Board of Studies, Film Studies Center, Calcutta University. Also a member of the Board of Studies, Postgraduate Department of Film Studies, Jadavpur University, Calcutta. He was also a member of the governing body of the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, and also a member of the Fulbright Selection Committee of the United States Educational Foundation in India, Calcutta. In 1995, University Grant Commission Consortium for Educational Communication gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. In 1999, a special mention of his book, Communication Cinema Development, at the National Awards for Film and Books on Film was done, and he was given the award by the then President of India. Though extensively traveled, he made Kolkata his home. Among his close friends were Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen. He studied their films and became an authority on them. As mentioned already, the Russian filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein was another person that Father Robert mastered and wrote a book on his films. Battleship Potemkin and October were his favorite Russian films. Now, behind his interminable...
Father, mic is muted, Father. Unmute your mic. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Behind his intermittent spirit was, I believe, his spirituality. His holistic spirituality embraced the whole world and everything in it. I had seen him many times in the morning hours sitting in front of an icon of Trinity in deep meditation. Only after his meditation he engaged in his daily chores. He was a great admirer also of Indian spirituality. It was exemplified in his admiration for Vandana Mataji, a mystic from Rishikesh. And behind his relentless search for developing new ideas was his conviction that he is truly a pastor whose duty is to take care of the people God has entrusted to him. There was a time some of his contemporaries thought what he was doing in the media was not a pastoral work. It appears someone asked him how much of his time is devoted to pastoral work. His quick response was this: 24 hours. As a priest, he realized that his total involvement in the media was a pastoral engagement. This made him totally committed to the work he was engaged with. It also made him available to everyone who came in contact with him. He did everything for the greater glory of God. May God grant him eternal peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. You gave a very good biographical sketch and his achievements and milestones. It was very, very descriptive and informative. Thank you, Father PJ Joseph. With a lot of struggle, he has joined. So much of lockdown is going on. He has lost his Wi-Fi and so on.
Right.
Thank you very much. Now we have a very short video clipping from the documentary on Father Gaston Roberge. We'll watch that.
Gaston Roberge. Born in Montreal, Canada in 1935. Received his MA degree in film studies from the University of California at Los Angeles. In 1956, he joined the Society of Jesus and was sent to India at his request. Founder-director of Chitrabani, a social communication center. Parallelly, founder-director of the Educational Media Research Center, Kolkata. A film critic and film theoretician, communication expert and media analyst, social activist and heart awake. He is well known in India and has received several awards. The inevitable link between Roberge and India was the cinema of Ray, and a love for India shared with his maternal uncle. Father Roberge is nothing if he is simply a critic extraordinary and a conscientious teacher. He molds both into a unified entity. He has written for students, and what he has learnt as a teacher in the classroom has been incorporated in his subsequent writings.
About myself as a human and what I have done.
Ray said, Gaston Roberge has written a film book which is aimed primarily at the Indian student of cinema. One of the first things one notes about Roberge's book is its comprehensiveness. Roberge displays admirable patience, eclecticism, and clear-headedness. The whole book, indeed, is a labor of love. From Chitrabani to Cyberbani, Roberge's journey as a writer has been a long and exciting one. The book, Cyberbani, Being a Human in the New Media Environment. This book proposes a militant program of media education, starting with media awareness and leading to collective action in the cyberspace. The aim is to bring about cultural revolutions. Suffering multitudes of the new electronic, cybernetic, digital media age have been called the precariat. His book, Mediation, The Action of Media in Our Society. The book is structured around 9 main images. These images can be grouped in any way to form a personal mosaic. They may seem ill-assorted, yet these and similar images are there in the mind. It is up to each individual to integrate them. Let us consider the image of Gandhi. In spite of all predictions to the contrary, cinema and television, these two media, have nurtured our cultures. They have provided us with some of our better experiences, collective or individual. We can hope that the same will happen with virtual reality. It will be endowed with human wisdom, the wisdom of the self. To live in communion, Roberge's books on theology. For peace at troubled times, the signposts are Buddha, Jesus, and Gandhi. Father Roberge was associated with Mother Teresa.
Oh my God.
A superb and scholarly analysis of the film.
Oh my God.
Among the chapters are Ivan the Terrible, Stalin the Terrible, God the Terrible.
Спаси меня, Боже, ибо воды дошли до души моей. Я погряз в глубокой тени, и не на чем спать. Пошел.
Ivan the Terrible had been shown again and again to students all over the world. Similarly, Father Roberge's book can be read again and again, like a religious monograph. AIDS awareness, organizing the Bengali service, and the Rural Radio Listeners Club of Radio Veritas, helping children. Calls to distressed children and women. All such activities are an attempt to live as a true Christian on earth today. Based on long experience of social service, Father can convincingly say that people, youths in particular, are responsive to calls for help to communicate and organize. Father Gaston Roberge is a pioneer in the field of film studies in West Bengal. For that purpose, he started Chitrabani. Almost all of his books are meant for film literacy. In his book, To View Movies the Indian Way, Roberge made a radical call for an Indian film theory.
An Indian film theory. If there are Indian movies appreciated by millions of Indian people, then there are Indian films. And if there are Indian films, there is an Indian film theory that is forming these films, informing these films. And maybe it has not been formulated. তো আমি কিন্তু এটা ভেবে খুব খুশি যখন কলকাতায় এসেছি আমাকে একটা ইনিশিয়েশন দেওয়া হয়েছে আমাকে শিখিয়েছে আনন্দ কাকে বলে আমার সুযোগ হয়েছে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের প্রথম ছবি দেখতে আসার সময় আস্তে আস্তে ছোট অপু বড় হয়েছে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের ছবির মধ্যে আর শেষ ফিল্ম আগন্তুক তখন আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি আমার মনে হয় যে এখন আছেন মনমোহন মিত্র এটা আছে অপু তখন আর এইতে আমি দেখতে পেরেছি কলকাতার সংস্কৃতির মধ্যে যে আনন্দ আছে
Thank you. This video clipping is from the master preacher of film theory, a documentary film made by Kechi Das. So thanks to the documentary filmmaker of the master preacher of film theory. That gave a good glimpse of his life and ministry. Now we are moving to the keynote address, a legacy of Father Gaston Roberge. Its historical and social context. The keynote address will be given by Professor Venkatesh Chakravarti. Now I invite Professor Eugene, Substitute Coordinator of Viscom Department of Loyola College, to make a formal introduction about him.
Thank you, Father. Good evening, all. I'm happy to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Venkatesh Chakravarti. Professor Venkatesh Chakravarti is a film scholar, film critic, and a filmmaker, formerly trained in philosophy with the master's and the research degree at the Madras Christian College. He started his career in the film industry as a production executive in Bombay in 1970s. This was followed by his assignment as an assistant director in the Tamil film Gramathu Athiyayam and as a co-script writer in Nilavende Naatil, a Malayalam film. With that experience and his active engagement with alternative film culture, providing him all the technical and conceptual gear necessary, he taught at the Department of Direction at the Film and Television Institute of Tamil Nadu, now MGR Film Institute, at Tharamani from 1983 to 1987. In 1988, he played a key role in designing the first bachelor degree course in visual communication in the region in collaboration with Reverend Father Jayapati Francis, Arvind Merchant, and Dr. Suresh Paul, which was launched by Loyola College, Chennai in 1989. With the advent of sponsored programs on television in the late 1980s, he was engaged in various assignments with some of the leading production houses in various portfolios such as writer, director, and editor. He went on to teach in international program in Screen Studies, University of Malaysia and Penang from 1999 to 2002. He also served as a visiting faculty to teach a course on film studies in Central University of Hyderabad and at Tata Institute of Social Science, Bombay. He wrote a critically acclaimed play, Mirror, exploring the issues of female star suicides. In 2005, he worked as an executive producer of an Indian English feature film, Framed. This was followed by his documentary feature, Chennai, The Split City in 2006. Following which he worked as a senior faculty member at Mindscreen Film Institute, founded by the ace cinematographer Rajiv Menon. In 2008, it is with his well-researched curriculum design, the Ram Naidu Film School was founded by Suresh Productions at Hyderabad, where he served as the dean of the school and the professor of director and screenwriting until he joined L.B. Prasad Film and TV Academy in July 2014 as a regional director with similar responsibilities. Amidst such engagement, he has been constantly publishing scholarly articles in both in India and abroad in peer-reviewed journals, apart from contributing book chapters in Tamil cinema in the same language. In 2017, his first anthology of his critical essays on Tamil cinema, known as Suvadagal, was published. On July 24, 2017, he took charge as Dean, School of Media Studies at SRM University, Ramapuram. And from July 1, 2018, he returned as Dean of Ram Naidu Film School at Hyderabad. As an industry script consultant, he has 3 successful feature films to his credit, such as Vedam, Telugu, 2010, Vanam, Tamil, 2011, and Krishnam Vande Jagatguram, Telugu, in 2012. Thank you, sir. We welcome you to the event.
Thank you very much, and very good evening to everyone who gathered here, the august audience. I just want to say a few things before I actually make my presentation. I had the opportunity to meet Father Gaston Roberge and 2 times. Once was when he had come down to Chennai to give a talk in Chennai Film Society on his then latest book, The Subject of Cinema, which introduces psychoanalytic theory to the Indian student. So that was the first time I happened to meet Father Gaston Roberge. And second time was at some years back, 7 or 8 years back at the St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, when they were doing a seminar. Now, what for me, I take from the seminar particularly is very interesting. In the seminar, he sort of was deconstructing D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, okay, and particularly the racist discourse in the film. Interestingly, what is of significance is the original story of the Birth of a Nation of D.W. Griffith is written by a priest, Anglo-Saxon priest, and it was called the Klansman, obviously supporting the Ku Klux Klan. So that film was heavily criticized by people all around the world. In fact, Griffith apologized and went on to make what you call as to repair his own vision about himself and repair his image. He made another great film called The Intolerance, okay, which talks about intolerance in different societies, across 3 societies, across 3 historical periods, a masterpiece. But what for me stayed in my mind is, here was one Christian priest deconstructing another Christian priest, okay, broadly speaking. And that is image sort of stuck in my head. And Father Roberge, you know, is a very unruffled, quiet, sedate, sober mind, okay. It's always a delight for the student or the other learners or scholar to listen to. Having said that, let me, such a possibility does not, not possible. Say for instance, can I go into Benares Hindu University and critically deconstruct a film like Roja, or for that matter, a film like Hey Ram? Okay, you know what will happen? Some kind of a mob lynching will take place. And that's where we are today. Okay, so having said that, let me begin by sharing my observations. The legacy of Father Gaston Roberge SJ and its social and historical context. Ever since Father Gaston Roberge retired to his heavenly abode on August 26, tributes are continuing to flow across the country in the social media and the internet, apart from those already published in the print media. So he's a well-known personality, across India. As I foraged through many of the articles, accidentally, I stumbled on an important piece written by Abhijit Guha, a senior fellow at the Indian Council of Social Science Research, but written a year ago on the documentary film, The Master Preacher of Film Theory, made by K.G. Das, made on Father Gaston Roberge by K.G. Das. Abhijit Guha, in his article, How I Viewed the Film on Gaston Roberge, highlights 3 salient points that are worthy of repetition here, as it opens a way to come to grips with his prolific output and sustained engagement with cinema since the 1960s, while offering clues to his media activism at the same time. The first point focuses on Father Gaston Roberge, a Canadian Jesuit scholar going native in India. Some Europeans and Americans have no doubt by choice had gone native in India before Father Gaston Roberge took the plunge. There is the exemplary case of Mother Teresa, who went native before him. As for intellectuals, Professor Abhijit points out 3 figures. The anthropologist Xavier Raj, well known for his studies on the Gonds of Orissa and Madhya Pradesh, who became the deputy director of the Anthropological Survey of India when it was established in 1945. He ultimately settled down in Shillong. Unlike Xavier Raj, who was at the same time a Christian missionary and was closely associated with Gandhi, the great scientist J.B.S. Alden, an avowed atheist and Marxist, joined the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, in 1956, after deliberately rejecting Britain forever in the process. And then we have the case of Father Gaston Roberge. as Abhijit Guha points out, it's irrelevant whether these talented personalities believed in religion or science, but they loved, studied, and finally turned into native Indians is what matters. The second point Guha unravels relates to an apparent contradiction in the persona of Father Gaston Roberge, posed by him as a question: how a Jesuit father can think like a Marxist. Let me repeat, how a Jesuit father can think like a Marxist. In the documentary film, for instance, Father Gaston introduces class contradiction in terms of the authority wielded by the teacher over the students. With a very simple example. As Abhijit Goa points out, if we considered what happened in Latin America and the positive role played by missionaries who professed on the theory of liberation, the contradiction immediately resolves itself. In the film itself, Father Gaston cites how much he was influenced by Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, a classic that in pedagogy as well as for any kind of alternative change. It explains how his entire mission was about liberating the media oppressed. So his entire mission was about liberating the media oppressed. Incidentally, this marks a bitter irony in the present context, where media oppression has reached its highest peak in India, as never before, when media critics and theoreticians like Father Gaston have become a vanishing breed. In his review of Peter Gonzalez's book, Clothing for Liberation, a communication analysis of Gandhi's Swadeshi Revolution, published by Sage in 2010, Father Gaston notes that the violent communal riots in India that accompanied the 1990s well into the new millennium only strengthened my resolve to redesign a media education for peaceful and responsible citizenship. Okay, redesign a media education for peaceful and responsible citizenship. And praising Gonzalez's book for its high level of scholarship, he concludes, after reading the book, I'm quoting, after reading the book, I, for one, can only say, looking afresh at Gandhiji, I know in the depth of my being what he means. Another world is possible. To then go beyond what is said by Abhijit Guha, there are two other aspects that mark the kind of pedagogy Father Gaston was passionately obsessed about. On the one hand, he was heavily influenced by Ivan Illich's deschooling society, an alternative mode of education as a route to an alternative society that makes possible another world. On the other, as his observation elsewhere point out, his Marxist sympathies are very much grounded in the notion of poverty Christ, which he repeated at various points, which is spearheaded by Saint Francis of Assisi. The third, and what Abhijit Guha considers as the most important point, refers to the shift that occurs in Father Gaston Roberge's thinking on Indian cinema. In this last phase on Indian cinema, I'm not talking about, I'll come to Cyber Barney later on. In his last phase on Indian cinema, Father Gaston insisted on taking the popular Indian film seriously as an object of study, and do so by going beyond the film theories of the West. That is, he was trying to find a way, if possible, to pin down what it means to see a film the Indian way, and which can be then deployed to understand not only what occurs in a film like Pather Panchali, but also at the same time in films like Sholay and Three Idiots. Let me elaborate this. Particularly in Pather Panchali, he talks about the pickle scene, when Durga makes a pickle and shares it with Apu. And there are several shots in which Ray had given several close-ups. Some critics said, why give so many close-ups? What is the need for it? Okay, and here, drawing from Natya Shastra, Father Gaston Roberge said, point is to go beyond the narrative to emotionally arouse the audience. So here what Ray was trying to do is to share the characters, the joy that the characters feel, arouse the same joy in the spectators. So that was the thing. Okay, I'll come to Sholay and Three Idiots later. To elaborate this important shift that has taken place in his thought, or Father Gaston's understanding of the Indian film, however, we need to discuss the large social and historical concept of the movement for alternative film culture in the country. In the year 1959, 6 film societies, Calcutta Film Society, Delhi Film Society, Madras Film Society, Bombay Film Society, Patna Film Society, and Roorkee Film Society came together to establish the Federation of Film Societies of India with its registered office at Calcutta. The vision behind it was forged by Xavier Raj and Chitanand Dasgupta. The objective was to make the young audience of the country cine literate by screening important international films and serious efforts in different regional cinemas in the country. And that is in order to create a space for alternative film culture, which could lead to alternative filmmaking. With that, the cultural war that raged elsewhere between art cinema versus commercial cinema found its footing in India. Although Father Gaston Roberge arrived in India in this context in 1961, after completing his MFA course on theatrical arts and film at UCLA, his active engagement became visible after he established Chitrabani, a film and media education center at Calcutta in 1970, with the blessings of his close friend Xavier Raj. With that, he immediately addressed a major lacuna. Although films were made accessible by the film societies, literature on how to view films and understand its implication at a theoretical level was scantily available. Unless one had access to a library at a film institute, of which there were only 2 at that time, Film and Television Institute of Tamil Nadu, Chennai, and Film and Television Institute of Pune, Television Institute of India at Pune. There was no way one could access for instance, 2 volumes of Andre Bazan's What is Cinema or Eisenstein's Films. Chitrabani, a book on film appreciation published by Father Gaston, was widely distributed across India by the Film Federation of Film Societies of India through different film societies which had mushroomed by then across the country. It's a comprehensive book. It's a highly comprehensive book, which is a much useful book at that time for people like me. It is divided into 6 sections, carefully divided and sort of well formulated. It provides a comprehensive introduction to the media and art environment. First, it fixes the milieu in which cinema is operating. So it talks about the media and art and entertainment on one level, print media, radio, the press, and at another level is looking at art, theatrical arts, painting, music, and so on and so forth, and trying to see cinema in that context, and also looking at the same time on the social function of art and the role of the artist. And then he goes into the science and craft of film, okay? Its technical elements, the artistic aspects of film language, the history of film movements and film aesthetics, the contribution of regional cinemas, the anthropology of stardom, the objective of film societies, filmology, censorship, and so on, all in one book. That's what I mean. It's a comprehensive thing, and it is a very highly useful book coming at that time. Simultaneously, 2 other things happened. Accepting the clarion call for film literacy with an equal missionary zeal, P.K. Nair, the director of National Film Archives, also known as a celluloid man, not only made plenty of films available across the country, but conducted film appreciation courses across the country with Professor Satish Bahadur and at times with Professor Gaston Roberge as well. And with the advent of, say, Mrinal Sen's Bhuvan Shom in 1969, financed by Film Finance Corporation, the parallel or new cinema movement gathered momentum. Okay, with that, the cultural war between art cinema versus commercial cinema reached its peak here by the 1980s. It is in such a context Father Gaston Roberge published his next book, Films for an Ecology of Mind, Essays on Realism in the Cinema in 1978. And Another Cinema, Another Society in 1984, another important book calling for a militant program for creating alternative films in order to contribute to the growth of an alternative society. Elsewhere in the interim, after the May 1968 movement in Paris and the birth of the cultural study movement in UK, literature on film and media began to multiply as never before. Owing to this, by the early 1970s, film studies entered the English departments and the universities in the USA to soon become independent departments. Keeping abreast of these tidings, Father Gaston added more books to his oar so that the Indian students can come to grips with these new ideas which is emerging from elsewhere. Two of these are significant in this context. The Subject of Cinema, written in 1987, and The Ways of Film Studies, Film Theory and the Interpretation of Films. In the former, that is the Subject of Cinema, introduces the local leader to major film theories as done by Dudley Andrews in his book, The Major Film Theory, which was not available at that time yet, okay, not widely. Okay, and while the latter, the Subject of Film Study, Subject of Cinema, introduces psychoanalytical film theory, which again elaborates on the theory of Christian Metz, particularly his book, The Imaginary Signifier, in detail and with simpler and examples to the Indian student. Another valuable book. Okay, by the turn, that is by the end of 80s, however, some of us who were closely associated with the film movement in their own regions were becoming increasingly impatient about the binary art cinema versus commercial cinema. Not that good cinema should not be produced. That is not the idea. But this binary art cinema versus commercial cinema blocked any clear understanding of the mainstream film that was crying out for theoretical explanation. So there was this. So some of the aspiring scholars went abroad, got their PhDs in film studies and returned. All these things happened during this period of discomfort. Father Gaston Roberge also felt that things were not heading in the right direction despite all the noble intentions towards an alternative cinema. Our understanding of our cinema seems to have got stuck in the modes of theorization imported from elsewhere. In response, Father Gaston started taking the popular Indian film seriously, much to the derision of the elites who favored art cinema, as noted by Abhijit Gupta. Two books were published in this vein by Father Gaston: Indian Film Theory, Flames of Sholay, Notes and Beyond, and To View Movies the Indian Way. But what happened to these books is my next issue. He published these books. Okay, but both these books, however, were largely ignored by the Indian academia. Both these books were largely ignored by the Indian academia, not owing to any elitist reason, but a nuanced understanding that Indian cinema cannot be reduced to out and out culturally specific entity. You can't say there's a culturally specific way to see Indian cinema. Indian cinema as a form which is culturally specific, hermetically sealed. Despite its apparent differences from other cinemas. Yes, there are some differences, but these differences cannot be reduced as peculiarly something that is out and out essential to Indian cinema. So from the advent of 1990s, serious studies of the mainstream Indian cinema began to be published. Okay, more theoreticians entered the fray. In fact, by then, slowly our own universities, like Yadavpur University started a film studies department. Later on, Xavier's College also started a film studies department. Then film studies entered JNU, and very recently, a few years back, it entered IIT Madras. Okay, so what happened was suddenly there was an explosion of writing on serious writing. I'm talking about on Indian cinema. Okay, I can start. For example, let me cite 3 or 4 books. M.S.S. Pandian's The Image Trap, M.G. Ramachandran in Film and Politics, 1992. Madhav Prasad's seminal and very important book, Ideology of the Hindi Film, Historical Construction. Megastar Chiranjeevi and Telugu Cinema After N.T. Ramarao by S.V. Srinivas. Indian Cinema in the Time of Celluloid, that is before digital technology, from Bollywood to Emergency, by Ashish Rajadaksha. The Melodramatic Public, Film Form and Spectatorship in Indian Cinema, and many more. For instance, while Ravi Vasudevan's book clearly establishes the hybrid nature of dominant Indian film form, that is, the Indian film form cannot be sort of reduced to what Father Gaston is borrowing from Bharata Muni, Natya Shastra. It is a hybrid form. Okay, hybrid in the sense that it's a melange of British melodrama, Hollywood conventions, locally privileged kind of frontal compositions, which are more darshanik, almost placing the hero in a godlike position. Other local narrative devices borrowed from Nodaki and so on. Okay. But what Father Gaston happens to see at the same time, something peculiarly restricted to his understanding of Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, which he already elaborates in his very first book, Chitrabani. There's a chapter, separate chapter on Natya Shastra in comparison to Aristotle's Poetics. Okay, while that is throws some important light, the problem is when you essentialize what happens. While this, this understanding on the one hand leads to essentializing nature of Indian cinema, on the one hand, and on the other is readings of Sholay and 3 Idiots seem to foreclose any criticism of these films. It is not that Father Gaston was not aware of these criticisms. What happens is he focuses exclusively on the emotions aroused by these films, or the what you can call in the Bharata Muni's repertoire as repertoire of thought as rasas. Okay. It's solely focused on the emotions aroused and the kind of values the spectators may extract from them to reinforce their own sense of admirable values, which are needed for their existence. In this, although much as Father Gaston still puts people in the center, okay, as against the abstract constructed spectator of the film text, which elaborated in his book, The Subject of Cinema, any critical understanding is unwittingly foreclosed. For instance, at a sociological level, as Eric Hobsbawm identified in his book, Bandits, it's social inequality and the rebellion against it which created bandits or dacoits like Gabbar Singh, or for that matter, Fulan Devi. The film Sholay, by constructing Gabbar as an arch villain, elides the social causes which makes possible people like him. Although it was not Father Gaston's intention to suddenly set aside his Marxist understanding, unwittingly his reading of Sholay produces such a closure. And there is another problem. Problem is to see a continuity between Natya Shastra, which belonged to a feudal era, when time stood still, when time stood still, for eons time stood still. Modernity, there's a rupture in our thought, rupture in everything. Mobility, no longer time stands still after modernity, advent of modernity. So that's a great rupture. And so how do we see a continuity? For instance, as elaborated by theorists like Jonathan Crary in his Techniques of the Observer, he observes two things. How cinema and out is not some toy which became an entertainment form. It was out and out a capitalist invention associated with capitalistic scientific activities. People were trying to study for the first time vision, which was until the Renaissance was treated as a form of knowledge, suddenly becomes an object of study. So when this vision becomes an object of study instead of being a form of knowledge, a great rupture takes place. Why it becomes an object of study? Vision needs to be controlled, attention needs to be controlled in the factories, in the schools, in the prisons, and elsewhere. So there's this network. Okay, how capitalism organizes. So it was after trying to explain and understand uncontrolled vision. So people are after machines that could simulate human vision. So cinema is an invention which simulates human vision. It's a simulation. Okay, from that we have come to digital. From digital we have now, we have come to from that we have come to the digital era, and we have a machine in our hand now, which we can carry anywhere. And all these things are carrying on further. Those effects of these capitalistic intervention is carrying on. Okay, another problem of theorizing Indian cinema in that manner of Father Gaston Roberge arises from the field of comparative film studies. Comparative film studies. That is, as the late Paul Willman pointed out, if we treat each national cinema as hermetically sealed entity, then there is no common ground available to compare one with the other. There's no common ground. On what grounds will you compare Indian cinema with American cinema, or American cinema with Italian cinema? How do we compare? Okay, so what is common? Then what is common to all is the issue on which we can forge a comparative film studies. Only two things which are common across the world among all cinemas. One is capital, the other is technology. But capital and technology do not take the same route in every country. Depending on the level of development in each country or in the respective country, capital or technology will take the route. In India, it was very underdeveloped, industrially underdeveloped. Okay, so that was the situation. When cinema came here, for instance, began to grow, what is happening in a city like Bombay? No Indian business was allowed. No Indian business was allowed. Okay, no Indian factories were allowed. But something happens in immediately after First World War. Britain now permits Indians to start their own industries. And immediately in a place like Bombay, textile mills mushroom. When textile mills mushroom, the population doubles, triples. Okay, already people have built theaters and exhibitors. And these exhibitors, what are they showing there? No Indian film at that time, except on lonely film made by Falke and one or two people. There's not much to show. So basically, the recycling, dime a dozen films borrowed and bought at the market in London and recycling it. But it is after the labor force increases and multiplies, the theater owners come to know that that's a big audience, we can do a local film. Until then, the local film was a bloody, very expensive exercise. Someone has to go abroad, learn about it, and then come back, and then you're going to import the equipment. So a lot of bottlenecks. Today, the whole thing has changed. Any technology that is new technology that's available out there is immediately available online here. So that is the accessibility that has happened. So the capital and if you can see for a because of the kind of structure of capital, our cinema, as Madhav Prasad has noted in his ideology of Hindi film, for a large extent, till the turn of the 90s, remained in a feudal mode. Exposing feudal values, foregrounding feudal ideologies. It is in that mold it existed, although it appeared modern. Okay, so with the liberalization, there comes a break, there comes a rupture. Okay, you have a different kind of a cinema, globalization comes, and with liberalization, capital takes a different, now corporate entities have entered, multiplex theaters have come, all these things have happened. Okay, finally, there's one more historical issue that needs to be foregrounded. Although many of us, like Father Gaston, strongly believed that an alternative cinema would lead to social change, that dream has been shattered with liberalization for the following reason. Cinema, like architecture, changes only when the society changes. It's the other way around. So then what we do? Cinema, like architecture, changes only when the society changes, as noted by scholars. Always the first thing that changes when a society changes is architecture. Just look at how much the topography of our cities have changed since the advent of globalization. Madras thoroughly changed. Bombay at least was already a metropolis. Look at Hyderabad, look at Bangalore, look at Calcutta. Okay, massive changes. Okay, not only the new flyovers, bridges, this, that. Okay, all kinds of things. And so as our cinema has changed. Not necessarily for the good, with the advent of multiplexes and so on, although not necessarily for good. And now we have the OTT platforms, added to that. Another example we can take is the birth of New Hollywood cinema in the 1960s. How did New Hollywood was born? Not like Indian cinema, new Indian cinema. New Hollywood cinema came about because of the social turmoil created by the Vietnam War. The social turmoil, whole society was in turmoil to what happened to the youth who went to fight for the Vietnam War. That is how the new Hollywood cinema began, by addressing those issues. It came about going to that. The new Indian cinema was, of course, a change initiated from above. It is a state reformation, state trying to reform cinema from above. It's a discourse from above. Okay, but with the advent of liberalization, now NFDC is forced to monetize its investment. So thereby, the parallel cinema died a slow death. It's really difficult to monetize that. However, just like alternative cinema efforts in architecture will have to continue, although within its own periphery, okay, with the hope that, as Father Roberge would put it, another world is possible. Similarly, alternative efforts will have to continue, okay, in the field of cinema, although it may not result in great change. But that hope is necessary to sustain any kind of media activism, that another world is possible. In that sense, much of what Father Gaston Roberge written would continue to be of value, okay, continue to be, and you can see that his militant program, he returns to his militant program on the media when he goes into the cyber body, okay, cyber body, how it is necessary to create new kind of media communities or social communities across the media. Okay, as far as theological works are concerned, I do not have the competency to speak on them. However, I'm sure that there too, he would have proceeded with his faith that another world is possible. In that sense, Father Roberge's works will continue to inspire us, continue to help us, and continue to be of value. With that, I close my observation. Thank you all for your patience for listening to me. And I thank Visual Communication Department, Loyola College, for providing this opportunity to share my views on Father Gaston Roberge, particularly from the point of view of film studies. That's what I have done here. Okay, thank you. Of course, we can differ, have discussions. That's it. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You have given a very broad spectrum of Gaston's achievement, and you have placed him in the social and historical context of Indian cinema, and then we will move towards his dream, evolving Indian film theory. Thank you very much. We have another list of speakers to share their memories. Quickly, now I invite Father Francis Jayapati from Trichy St. Joseph's College to share his views. I appeal to all the speakers to keep your speech very brief. Yes, Father, you can go.
Okay. Good evening, and it is wonderful to be able to meet and remember Gaston in the company of Myron, in the company of Brito, and the company of Chakravarti, and of course Suresh Paul and Josephine, whom I know that we have shared ideas about Gaston with them. When I think of Gaston and when I met him first and the early days of my contact with him was because I was appointed to be the director of Jesuit communications in the Madrid province way back in 1980. And of course, I have no knowledge whatever about media. I am not a scholar or a student of film or photography or arts, but somehow the job of coordinating the media activities came into my hand. So I looked for people who could teach me, and the first one to come to help me out and get me in the right direction was Myron. And then came Gaston. And Gaston, from the very first moment, left a very deep impression upon me. A deep impression of a man who is very deep, a man of great interiority, a man of unspeakable spirituality without any kind of pious trammels. It was amazing, and I always was puzzled and enamored and wondered and fascinated by Father Gaston. Then I asked to spend a week or so with him in Chitrabani. He was gracious to host me, and that is the first time he introduced me to film and showed me a few clippings. I remember The High Noon, and most of all, I remember The Pilkhana Kid, a film that he himself had made, at which George Punadeth had worked very hard, and he was broken into a media man through that process. Hilkana Kid was a film about slums. But instead, in the normal run of things, films about slums would show the great misery and absolute poverty and filth and illness, dirt, and heaps of rubbish. But here, he showed people with smiles, people who found that they can be human beings despite all the things that are so hard to bear, that in spite of all the things that dehumanizes in the socio and economic environment. And it gave me an entirely different perspective. And it is only as I began to read a few of his books, I began to understand something, that for him, film was not an entertainment. Film was not a thing just to study and to be waxing eloquent about. A film is not something to be just being criticized. Film is something, in the words of Eisenstein, which he quoted, is an experience that plows deep into the psyche of the viewers. An experience that plows deep into the psyche of the spectators. Because what had always been the focus of Gaston in all his works is the great wonder about the human quality and a grateful celebration of the humanness of people. I was very happy that Venkatesh mentioned he put people at the center. And this is what he did. Not only when he met you as an individual, not only when he addressed people in the classrooms, or when he was talking with other great film personalities or artists, when he met with anyone on the streets, he did put people in the center. That is why he was so affectionately called in the streets of Kolkata, Father Gautam Roberge, not Father Gaston Roberge. He was made into one of their own in the particular way Bengalis pronounce Gaston as Gautam and Roberge as Roberge. And this idea of centrality of humanness is something, not an idea for him. It was something that he wanted to live. He wanted to experience. He wanted to promote. That is why what is caught up in the last book, at least already in the title, From Morosity to Hope, when he writes about communication, media, cinema, and development. And in the foreword to the Encounters with Civilizations, from Alexander the Great to Mother Teresa. It is the idea that humanness is what matters, and it is not measured in terms of money, and least of all, in terms of ideology. He never liked ideologies. He hated a certain enthusiasm people bring towards ideology, and that get imprisoned by its own ideology and get stuck in the way they think, in the way they perceive, and in the way they tend to forget the human beings who are at the heart of any thought and expression and action. So he was not interested in getting a liberal, balanced view of the world. He was interested in recognizing everything that goes around him, at the same time remove whatever is deleterious for humanness and build and promote whatever enhances the humanity. And this is what he did in the very way he lived, the very way he talked, the very way he smiled, the very way he met other ideas, and the very way he brought such a freshness into meeting people. So if I think of Father Gaston, one of the things that puzzled me was, why would a man who is so much interested in the study of great films and film criticism and media and art performance would spend time writing a book on Saint Teresa of Lisieux and the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which sounded very pious, and the title is A Little Way to God. It is because he didn't see any disconnect between the deep spirituality, which was his life, which was also his mission, and that is why he always remained a pastoral person, and the way he was understanding people and their culture and their history. So when I think of Father Gaston, I think of the great humility he had. See, he was very much interested in the program of media education, which we started in Culture and Communication. And he was, whenever we connected, first question he would ask is, how is this media education program coming along? I didn't realize until he himself has written a book on titled Mass Communication and Man, a book written for high school students so that they can understand this whole business of media and the world in which we live. So his heart was to bring this education about the film and the media world into the young people. But the fact that he never mentioned the book to me, he says, read this book, this is what I have written about it. But the fact that he was interested in the work that I was doing in the media education was so important to him. I used to even get a little embarrassed or sometimes a little irritated because the work was not going as well as I thought it should go. In the last analysis, I see he is a man on the one hand, a combination of a personality like Satyajit Ray, intellectual, artistic, reflective, with deep sense and perceptions. He is also a man with an unconditional charity, like Mother Teresa, and in a way, in a quiet, heroic, in a way like an ordinary citizen. This combination of these three, a great intelligence, an unconditional charity, and the ordinary heroism of an ordinary citizen. This is how I remember Gaston. May he live with us, with our memories, with these three perspectives and with the gentleness and kindness with which he always will remind us that we are all called to be a man of great interiority, of great appreciators of the humanness that is around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Francis Jayapati. You have given pointed out the important qualities you found in him. Now I welcome Father Myron J. Pereira SJ from Mumbai province. He was the former editor of Jeevan, a popular magazine among Jesuits. He also wrote a small article in UCAN News as soon as Father Gaston died last month. It was very interesting piece of write-up I went through. So I thought he should be present in this virtual meeting. Welcome, dear Myron.
Thank you, Irudayaraj, and thank you for inviting me to share in this memorial service of reminiscences of Gaston, our great friend Gaston Roberge. I want to begin by sharing with you 2 or 3 little anecdotes about Gaston. I first met Gaston Roberge on a train traveling from Pune to Mumbai, or to Bombay at that time, a few days before Christmas, 1967. I was returning from Pune from a short visit to Dinobli College, And he was going to Bombay with another scholastic to celebrate the Christmas Mass for Bengali in Bombay. I had not heard of him before, just vaguely, largely in the context of silk screen pictures of Our Lady painted by our Jesuit artist from Bombay, Victor Afonso. But I'd never met him before, nor did I know of his interest in cinema. But on the journey, our conversation was all about films, and particularly about one film of Robert Bresson, a French filmmaker, Au Hasard Balthazar, which I had recently seen at a film festival and which I frankly disliked. And Gaston very patiently explained to me how the donkey in this film, called Balthazar, was actually a figure of Christ. Well, that's the way it started. This was the first of many conversations over a long friendship. And I want to say this, Gaston, in my book, was a poor public speaker, but he was a very fascinating and a very interesting conversationalist. You could talk to him by the hour and you always came away enriched. Here's another story. I asked him, how did you, where did you do your film studies? And he said, at the UCLA in Los Angeles, in California, it was one of the best film schools, and I took an MA in theater arts. He said, I had applied for admission, but I wasn't too confident about being taken in. He says, most of those who sought admission were young American kids who had made about 2 or 3 films in their portfolios. And where was I here, an ancient Jesuit? He was then 32 years old, applying from India, unknown to everyone. Now, before he went to California, he had spent that last year in Pune. They're doing his 4th year of theology. And why Pune? Because he had wanted to attend the Film Institute at that time and learn concretely exactly what the Film Institute could give him. And it so happened that at that very time, there was a famous film critic and author in residence, and her name was Mary Seaton. She was a British actress, writer, author, good friend of the Nehru family, and a film critic and film historian. And she and Gaston shared a common interest in Eisenstein. So they started talking. And naturally, Gaston asked her, Miss Seaton, would you write a recommendation letter for me, please, to the UCLA? And of course she said, yes, I will. Can you imagine, Gaston told me, the consternation which her letter caused? This famous writer on film recommending this unknown priest from India. Who on earth was this Father Roberge, they wondered. Of course, they took him. And as they say, the rest is history. Here's a third little story. Gaston left for India in 1961, and he took a ship out of New York. As he himself says, I spent that night, the night before I embarked, in a hotel in New York, and I discovered that there was an art theater close by. And the next thing I discovered is that they were showing the Apu trilogy of Satyajit Roy. Pathe Pachali, Aparajito, and Apur Sansar. So he went out and watched those 3 films one after the other that night. Amazing. the impact that those three films on India made in him was deep and unforgettable. Little did he know that in 10 years' time, he was going to become a close friend of Satyajit Roy, the director, and invite him to be the co-founder of Chitrabani Institute. Well, these are three little anecdotes from the past. And I want to conclude now by asking all of us here, let me share with you three significant themes in Roberge's writings, in Gaston Roberge's writings. One of them is Christian communication. He has a book on this and is entitled The Faithful Witness. To him, communication means exactly that, being a witness to a value, to a message. And in that respect, he was completely at variance with, I would say, the institutional church, where communication often means a form of indoctrination and a form of thought control. So this is one beautiful idea which he explains in that book, The Faithful Witness, to be a witness to a value which you have imbibed, and the value is that of the gospel and ultimately of Christ as a person. Another idea, cinema is a dream. This is not original Gaston. It belongs to a German critic of the 30s, I think, called Paul Krakauer, who said that basically cinema presents us with what we fantasy about, our dreams, whether they are good dreams or whether they are bad dreams, whether they are aspirational or whether they are terrifying. For Gaston, developing this idea, he speaks of cinema awakening the caveman in each of us. And I think one of his latter books, he deals with the cave paintings, I think, of Altamira. Another sentence from him is, a movie is experienced in the viewer's heart. In other words, when you enter that large, dark cavern, which is the cinema hall, and you interact with the images which flash before you on the screen, something or other happens to you and happens to your emotions. So deeply, at its deepest level, cinema is an emotional experience. Therefore, he has a line where he speaks of my journey to India in the cave of my heart. This also relates very well to his take on Indian film theory in terms of the spectator, the importance of the spectator. Well, I conclude now by talking about what Father Arupe wanted for all of us when years ago he asked Jesuits to engage in communications, in social communications. And he realized how the media were changing our ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. How they were creating, in other words, a new kind of humanity, a new kind of person. He wanted Jesuits to be present in this area. If there was one Jesuit who took this very seriously and who was present in this world of the cinema, and not only the cinema, but also the work of cyberspace, the world of cyberspace and the internet, it is Gaston Roberge. And today, we pay him this tribute and we honor his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Myron. You gave very interesting anecdotes and very serious reflections on his life and mission. Now, we have the former director of EMRC, Father George Ponadath, SJ, He's not able to connect, but he has sent his video message. Now we'll watch him in the video.
I know Gaston fairly well because I have worked with him several years. I think Gaston is a great dreamer, big dreamer. And he wanted people around him also to dream big. But it was not just a dream. He tried very hard to bring those dreams to reality. Chitrabani, EMRC, and all his books are proof of this. They bear witness to these big dreams. But why did Gaston dream so big? And why did he want people to dream big? Is it just to show big things, big achievements? I don't think so. I think at the root of this dreaming big is his Ignatian spirituality of marches, doing great things for God. The other character that I notice in Gaston is his relentless desire for perfection. He wanted everything to be perfect. He wanted his TV programs to be perfect, radio programs to be perfect, books, book designs, everything he wanted to be perfect. And in fact, he expected people around him also to stretch their hands to perfection. Why this quest, this relentless quest for perfection? I think again, what Gaston in seeking perfection was doing was seeking the face of God. So it was not perfection for the sake of perfection, but he sought the face of God in perfection. Now, speaking about my own experience, I have worked with Gaston for several years. In the beginning, when he was the director, he would check all the scripts that I wrote. He would watch all the TV programs that I made before they were sent on air. One day, I remember we were watching a program that I had made. He knew that I had spent a lot of time and effort on that program, and we watched it. And when Gaston watches the program, I do not watch the program. I watch his face. Towards the end, I could more or less make out that the program did not pass. And what was Gaston's reaction? Gaston said, "Good, but I think we have to redo the whole thing again." Now, what's the meaning of that? One would ask, if it is good, why should I do it again? Actually, what he was meaning was, the effort that I put in, my work, that was good. But the product was not good. It did not meet that perfection that he desired. Therefore, he said, yes, your effort is good, but it's not good enough. The program, the product is not good enough. In doing this, he did not hurt me. He encouraged me to become better. In saying this, I am reminded of the sayings in the book of Isaiah. Here is my son. He would not crush a broken reed. He would not put out a smoldering wick. Gaston was that. He would not put out a smoldering wick. He would not crush a broken reed. He would encourage people. He was very gentle in doing that, so that people are not broken, and at the same time, they are challenged to go forward. That is my experience of Gaston.
So we thank Father George Bernardet for his video message. Now I invite Dr. Josephine Joseph, former HOD of Communication Department, Madras University. He has produced a number of students in film studies from Madras University, many of our academic institutions, many professors, assistant professors were her students. So I feel proud. I also did my MA program in Madras University. That time she was the HOD of the department. Now I invite Dr. Josephine to share her memories about Father Gaston.
Thank you, Father Irudayaraj, for your kind words. I'm very happy to share my little experiences with Father Gaston Roberge. I had the opportunity of meeting him 2-3 times in Pune and in Chennai. In Chennai, when we had invited him for a film appreciation course organized by the Chennai Film Society. He was a great man, and he was a pioneer, as far as communication is concerned, visual communication is concerned, and film studies. His very book, Chitrabani, it was is a testimony to the work that he began, first of the books that he produced. And he has produced as many as 35 books. Father Gaston was a very kind, simple, and silent person. We could approach him and we could discuss our interests, and particularly in the field of communication and film studies. I had an opportunity of having a long discussion with him on with regard to my thesis. I was really happy. It was at a time when there was no one to discuss about my thesis. Here was somebody, a person highly knowledgeable, and who could offer so many, of points to me, with regard to my thesis work. I'm really grateful to him for that. And anytime we invited him, he came very willingly. And he was an institution by himself. So he did not remain an institution by himself, but he has really built a great institution, in the field of communication and the field of cinema in the form of Chitrabani. And he has inspired, hundreds and hundreds of people in the field of communication. He was a priest, and his mission was communication, and his mission was film studies. What reminds me is that most of the time, many of our priests in churches would curse cinema. They would call cinema as the new Satan, who would destroy people and take people away from God and things like that. But here was a missionary, who did not curse cinema, but he lit 1,000 lamps, and illuminated the knowledge on media, and particularly the knowledge on cinema. This is something very remarkable and highly remarkable. And I'm very happy that I could talk a little on Father Gaston Roberge, and I wish that his legacy and his mission may continue in the field of communication, in India, in Calcutta, and in the Jesuit regions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was very interesting. You spoke out very well about your memory and so on. Thank you very much. Now I invite Father Brito Vincent, a Jesuit of Chennai province. Also, he took his diploma in Chitrabani. He spent more than a year and got training in Chhatrapani. He has a very good long memories about him, but I request him to be very brief because already it is getting time. Yes. Yes, Brito.
Respected dignitaries, all communicators and media personnel, and friends of Father Gaston Roberge, I offer my sincere and deepest condolences, and I also wish you a good evening. Lots of memories come to my mind about Father Gaston Roberge. For want of time, I restrict myself only to the level of me being a student of Father Gaston Roberge for about 7 months in the year 1987, September to May 1988. I feel grateful that Father Francis Dept guided me to design a syllabus for myself and undertake the study under the guidance of Father Gaston Roberge as part of the Social Communications Diploma course offered by Chhatrapani Center when I did not get through in the interview in the National School of Drama, New Delhi in 1987. That was a failure, but the failure brought in a wonderful opportunity of getting connected to great giants, two giants. Number one, Sri Badal Sarkar, the proponent of third theatre or free theatre, with whom I became a good friend. And secondly, Father Gaston Roberge. Father Gaston Roberge played a vital role to help me grow in my intellectual caliber, in depth, and also as a communicator who says or writes or produces what one means, not to have any deviation from what I mean and what I write or what I say. So that kind of a grooming I experienced happening to me thanks to the guidance I received from Father Gaston Roberge. In short, I would say that was a disciplined process of learning. Whatever that we call in terms of self-study paper that is being introduced nowadays through the UGC and in our colleges, that I felt was happening in the year 1987 and 1988, thanks to the guidance that I received from Father Gaston Roberge. You all know the kind of social communications diploma course offered by Chhatrapani. It is a 4-layered program, 4 kinds of requirements one has to fulfill. One has to read about 20 books and write reviews of those 20 books, and watch either film programs or any art programs, be it theater or exhibitions or whatever, and write reviews about them, and that once again about 20, and attend about 5 workshops or seminars and write review about them. And that is when I was able to incorporate the workshop that was conducted by Badal Sarkar into the whole program of social communications diploma course offered by Chhatrapani. And many activities in terms of people's theatre that were happening in Calcutta, I was able to get myself exposed to. The 4th aspect is a very important aspect, that is to come out with a dissertation or a product. And it is there I see a great hand of Father Gaston Roberge being played in my life. I would say it was a process of sharpening my thinking. I wrote a paper titled Folk Theatre for Conscientization, and I was trying to see whether a folk theatre like Tirukuttu could bring in a space for communicating contemporarily relevant messages, and particularly messages related to empowering the poor, empowering the Dalits. And that is what I was taking up. And it was a study of the compatibility between the form and content, the form of Tirukuttu and the content of contemporary relevance. And that is where the role that was played by Father Gaston Roberge was great. I wrote about 5 chapters in this particular dissertation. And in the first 3 chapters, I had to quote a lot of people like Marina Leach, who had come out with the dictionary on Standard Dictionary of Mythology, Legend and Folklore. And that's when Richard Frasca, an American who had done a study on Tirukuttu titled Theatre of Mahabharata, And I also quoted a lot of writings by Kapila Vatsyayan in terms of traditional theatre, folk dances, and so on, and also Natya Shastra. So these three papers were sort of introductory papers. And in those introductory papers, three important aspects I could learn from Father Gaston Roberge. Number one, you say or write what you really mean. That is something which was very much meant by Father Gaston Roberge. Secondly, if something has been communicated powerfully well or in a sharpened way with the help of one word or with the help of one sentence, do not add one more word. Do not add one more sentence. That is what Father Gaston Roberge would say. And he would even say, if you add one more word to what is already meant very sharply, then you are diluting the meaning of that particular message that is being carried out. And he used to be ruthless in making me rewrite where he found me beating around the bush. And that kind of an experience I really had when I wrote these three chapters. And precision, being to the point, these were taught to me as elements of communicability. Thirdly, the last two chapters which I wrote, for those two chapters, he gave remarks saying excellent. And he didn't strike off anything. He didn't ask me to rewrite anything. And when I asked him, why Gaston, these two chapters you call excellent, whereas you asked me to rewrite the other three papers, then he said, they are original and they have flown from your mind and from your heart. That is what he said. Everything has to flow from your own mind and your own heart. And that is what I'm able to see in these last two papers, chapters. And therefore, I call them excellent. I really feel happy that that was a kind of a preparation for me to do things later on. When I did my MPhil studies in Tanjore Tamil University in folklore, when I did MA ethnomusicology in Queen's University Belfast, and when I did my PhD combining both ethnomusicology and folklore in MS University from FRRC Palangotai, this experience came handy to me to be very sharp in the way how I could express in my writing. And that was a wonderful experience. And all the writings that we all left with, the students left with, are kept in the library of Chitrabani. And later on, I was very happy to get a note from an Austrian social scientist by name Eva Wallensteiner, saying that you have written a wonderful thesis on the title Folk Theatre for Conscientization, which is giving me a lot of inspiration to take up my work in India. These are all people who are staff of Chitrabani. So that kind of role or that kind of a space he provided to the students, and any meeting that took place with the staff of Chitrabani, he would make all of us to be part of the whole process, and everything was shared with the students. And that is something I really liked, and that is where, as Jayapati pointed out, as Mr. Venkatesh Chakravarti also pointed out, and also Father Myron pointed out, the humane dimension of Father Gaston Roberge I was able to come across. The third aspect that I feel very happy and grateful for is the high reputation and the high image that he had gained brought a lot of privileges to me when I was a student of Father Gaston Roberge. In Calcutta, no other state has that kind of a beautiful thing. In Calcutta, there is a cinema hall which is run by the government itself. And, wonderful films and very rare films and films of, award-winning nature and so on, all those films would be screened in the theatre called Nandan. And on many occasions, I was happy to see the then Chief Minister Jyoti Basu inaugurating many such programs. And in many such programs, I enjoyed the company of Father Gaston Roberge. as it was for the Gaston Roberge, it was possible for me to watch many such rare films. I can go on enumerating a lot of films of the sort. One particular experience that I had was the 18 log episode with which Govind Nihalani came out with a serial called Tamas through Doordarshan. It was on Indo-Pak partition, and that was screened for about 9 hours in London. And I was able to have the experience of watching that 9-hour-long film in London Cinema Hall in the company of Father Gaston Roberge. What was made available for 18 weeks in the country, we were able to watch within a day for about 9 hours. And that was a great experience I really had. Secondly, the film titled Gospel According to Matthew by the filmmaker Matthew Pasolini, and who was known as a Marxist. And verbatim, he followed the text of the Gospel according to Matthew without changing any word, without changing any sentence, or without even rearranging the sentences, rearranging the sequences. It went simply in the linear way. But at the end of the whole film, when we came out of the hall, we came out with the feeling of experiencing Jesus as a powerful personality, empowering the poor, empowering the outcasts and so on, and voicing for the sake of the poor. And that is where Father Gaston said, you see the Marxian touch of the filmmaker Matthew Pasolini. And that is where in folklore also we used to learn, there is a difference between the word text and the performance text. And there is a difference between the word text and the film text. That is what we were able to see, the perspective with which the film is made, and the unction and the accent with which the actor can come out. It can really give a new interpretation to the text which is available in the form of word. And that is what we were able to see in the film that was made by Matthew Pasolini, with the same title, Gospel According to Matthew, with the same text following the 28 chapters of the Gospel according to Matthew. And he said, see how powerful the film has been made by Matthew Pasolini. It is because of the art of filmmaking. That is what he would say. And I was very happy to see the film Bengal Famine 1842, because in Culture and Communication, thanks to Father Jayapati, we had bought a lot of film scripts. And one particular film script that we had in the library was Bengal Famine 1842. Apu trilogy we had, and films, theatre script of Vijay Tendulkar and so on. All those things used to be available in communication, culture and communication. And with the background of having read the text, when I watched the film Bengal Famine 1842, I was simply moved by the way how the film was made, and by the way how Mrinal Sen had love for the people who experienced the Great Famine in 1842, just like Tadu Varshathu Panjam, which was experienced by the people of Tamil Nadu in 1867. There are a lot of moving experiences about that particular film. Another experience that I had was watching the film Anantaram by Adur Gopalakrishnan, which was the award-winning film, and it was watched in Nandan. And after watching it in Nandan, we had a discussion on the film in Chhatrabani under the leadership of Father Gaston Roberge. That's when we could become great friends with Adur Gopalakrishnan himself. And when he made a film near Shengotai later, he made a call to FRRC Palankote, St. Xavier's College, to get himself connected, to tell us that he was just closer to Palankote. So that kind of a relationship we were able to make thanks to the giantly image of Gaston Roberge. Another experience was in the Max Muller Bhavan of Calcutta, which is in Baliganj, where they screened the film titled Third Reach. The films on Third Reach were about the way how Hitler prepared his own army through march past and parades. The musical, background for the parades and the march past the militarian dimension that was given to the army and so on, all those things brought in a mindset among the people of the army to go for genocide, and how a parade, how march past can play a vital role to prepare an army to go to an extent of genocide. And that was a beautiful experience that I could really have in the company of Father Gaston Roberge. I really feel grateful for all these experiences, because these experiences, there are many other experiences I had that brought in a lot of broadened outlook in my life, and I could see myself that I can responsibly grow with freedom. That kind of teaching was given to me during this experience. One beautiful experience that we used to have on every Sunday, fortnightly or on a monthly basis, was Gaston himself used to call it a program of exposure cum extravaganza. And that is when he would go to visit his great friends like Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen, and the editor of the publications called Seagull Publications, Mr. Shamik Banerjee or Shamik Bandopatay. Whenever he went to visit all these people, he would call me to accompany him, and I accompanied him. I had a great experience of being with Satyajit Ray in the company of Father Gaston Roberge in his own house. And I had a very beautiful experience of meeting Mrinal Sen, because Mrinal Sen knew that I didn't know much of Bengali, though I began to learn some Bengali. And therefore, he started to converse in English, and Gaston Roberge felt very happy about it. Whereas Satyajit Ray did not do that. He confined himself to Bengali, and but still the conversation went on. I got a very good feeling of meeting such people, and I had a very beautiful feeling of meeting Mrinal Sen, because I liked the value that was preached by the Bengal famine in 1842, and behind that particular value, I was able to see Mrinal Sen, and in person I was able to meet Mrinal Sen through Father Gaston Roberge. That way, I was also very happy to meet Shamik Banerjee, because he came out with a lot of books of Father Gaston Roberge himself, and Ruston Borucha's book title Revolution of Revolution, Rehearsals for Revolution, and so on. All those books were published by Seagull Publications, thanks to Shamik Banerjee. I really feel very happy about it. And towards the end, I could pick up the feminist dimension in Father Gaston Roberge himself. He would tell us, when you write, try to write in such a way that you don't bring in gender bias. You bring in the words which can incorporate people of both the gender. That is something he used to talk about. And also in terms of film analysis, he used to talk about a particular concept called male gaze. Male gaze is, in short, the obscene way how the image of a woman is portrayed on the screen is not only making the men to look at that woman with male gaze, but it is also forcing women to look at the body of a woman who's shown in an obscene way with male gaze. That kind of a depth with which Father Gaston Roberge used to talk. There are many such kind of stuff. Finally, he used to say, whenever I went for discussion for my paper, he used to say, I hate theater. Every time I sat with him, he would say, I hate theater. But still, he was able to guide me on a paper on folk theater for conscientization. And when I was in Chitrabani, he gave me an opportunity to guide the pre-novices in street theater training program. And we came out with a film, with a street theater program. That's when, the issue of forcibly making Rup Kanwar commit sati as her husband died. That happened. And Gorkha land issue was happening. Combining all these issues, I was able to evolve a play with the help of the pre-novices, and we put the particular play out. And when the play was performed, Gaston was an attentive spectator for this particular program. He very keenly watched that particular play, and at the end he said, I really understand that theater also can mean something. That is what he said. So that kind of a humane dimension I was able to see in him. When I concluded my studies in Belfast, when I wanted to, when I offered myself to visit him in Rome, when he was the executive secretary of the Jesuit communicators in the Curia of the Society of Jesus in Rome. I went there, and at the railway station of Rome, I saw Gaston Roberge waiting to receive me. He received me, took me as his own guest of the Curia. That kind of luxury would not be offered to anyone. It was offered to me. It happened because it was Gaston Roberge whom I went to visit, or who made myself his own host. I offer all these gratitude to Father Gaston Roberge. Thanks to the opportunity given by Irudayaraj, Father Irudayaraj to me. Many things are within my heart. All those things also I offer with all sincere gratitude. And I am sure he is experiencing eternal bliss because he was a man of spirituality. And I only pray that he bless all of us from heaven above. May God bless all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brito. It was a very personal touch, and how he guided you in your thesis and so on. Thank you very much for all the memories you shared with us. And now I invite yet another student. He is a 25th student, he says. Father Irudayaraj SJ from Andhra province. He is teaching in Vijayawada Loyola College. He has a very short and written speech. He will read out. Yes, Father Irudayaraj from Andhra province.
Thank you. Gaston Roberge, he was a visionary, spiritual, intellectual, and reflective. I would speak only on this. First of all, I am proud to have been a student of Father Gaston Roberge. He had a vision for communication ministry and for the Jesuit communicators. Father Gaston, as the director of Chitrabani, took every year one person and trained him or her in filmmaking and theories of film and mass communication. In the 25 years of Gaston's life at Chitrabani, he produced 25 media professionals. Father Vincent Brito and Mr. Parimalam were part of this learning from Gaston. Gaston treated everyone equally, whether one is a Jesuit or a lay person studying at Chitrabani. The only privilege that I had was to live with him in the community and accompanying him for meetings, meeting some film directors, and of course on the weekends. He initiated me into production. He just gave me an interview by a professor from an African country and asked me to make a film along with the staff of EMRC. That was my first video for television. He was very forthright in his comments and critique on any work done by students, and that included me. Gaston should be called the father of films because he loved films, critiqued films, and always had insights into any film. Once I told Father Gaston that a particular film is not good. He corrected me saying, every film is good because so many are involved in making it. Subjectively, you haven't experienced your viewing as good. He has authored more than 30 books and any number of talks. It is also difficult to read his books sometimes. Gaston was an intellectual, and perhaps sometimes we did not understand him. I invited Gaston for the inauguration of the Department of Mass Communication at Loyola Academy, Secunderabad in 2004. Gaston accepted my invitation and traveled to Secunderabad all the way by train because I told him that I won't be able to pay him. He delivered the keynote address, and I still remember him saying about the new media and the positive effects of new media on the millennials. He was very systematic and perhaps a perfectionist when it comes to addressing his own students or staff. He trained his staff well. Late Mr. Amit Patra was trained as a teacher of film studies. I'm sure both Gaston and Amit would be discussing the subject of cinema. He was a voracious reader and a visionary. Father Gaston is known nationally and internationally. He received the National Film Award, Special Jury Award, special mention for his book on the subject of cinema. This was one of his best books along with Chitrabani. S.B. Veda of Kolkata describes Father Gaston as filmmaker, priest, writer, critic, and professor. He quotes Father Gaston saying, people say I am the father of film studies in India. I am not. That honor goes to Bharat Muni. He was very humble he was a very humble Jesuit and very sensitive towards the culture of the locals. He was a mentor to many and he was available to people. A number of his students will feel the void that he has left in them because everyone who came into contact with him just loved him. I'm sure he will live in the memories of the thousands of filmmakers because he encouraged them personally and many times created opportunities for them. I would certainly personally miss him. May Gaston rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Irudayaraj, for your wonderful, very short speech, especially bringing about your memory with him. Now we are about to conclude this memorial meeting and lecture. Maybe can we take one or two questions with Venkatesh Chakravarti, keynote speaker? If you have any one question or two questions before Alex Parimalam goes for vote of thanks. Anybody? We are running short of time, already 8:30, because we started 15 minutes late because of technical issues. There are no questions. We will move on to vote of thanks. Of course, I am planning to bring out a small booklet on what happened today. At that time, we will include all the memories, sharings, and so on. Okay, there are no takers. It looks like that. Now I invite Father Professor Alex Parimalam, who is teaching in the Visual Communication Department of Loyola College, one of the senior faculty members. Also, he was a student in Chitrapani. He had fond memories of Gaston, but he was not given an opportunity to share his memories. He was given a responsibility of giving vote of thanks. He can, one or two points he can include in his vote of thanks. Yes, Alex Parimalam.
Thank you, Dr. Irudayaraj, and good evening to everyone. I am privileged to do this job of proposing vote of thanks. Probably Dr. Irudayaraj asked me to do this job because I was a student of Father Gaston, and definitely I would wish to speak about him. And also on behalf of both the host organizations, I have to thank all of you. I'm still tempted to share my experience, but we are already behind the schedule. And my friends, Father Brito and Father Lourdes, they shared all the memories which I endorse it. So let me restrict myself to the job of giving the vote of thanks. Father Gaston Roberge is no more with us, but we are not mourning. Rather, we are paying tribute to him. His departure to eternal life is definitely a loss to all of us. Loss for the film critics because Gaston won't be writing yet another book. Loss for the religious, especially for the Jesuits, because they won't find yet another Jesuit who could combine piety and progressive thoughts. And loss for the media teachers because Gaston was a rare mentor who could inspire even at the age of 85. Loss. Still, today's meeting is a great moment because Gaston has brought all of us together. People who brainstormed, innovated, explored together in late 80s and 90s have gathered together today. And it's like a reunion. I'm sure this is what Father Gaston wanted as a continuation of his journey. Media critics, media activists, media teachers coming together and exploring the new possibilities of looking at media and using media. Of course, Gaston was one of the pioneers in communicating the Indian ways of looking at cinema and media. All of us, some way or other, were inspired by his books, presents, classes, and that's why we are here. And the mandate to us is that we need to come out with indigenous thoughts and indigenous theories. As we come to the end of this meeting, I feel privileged to thank all of you on behalf of the Communication Commission, Chennai Province, and the Department of Visual Communication. This This vote of thanks is a sign of my personal gratitude to Father Gaston, because I was guided and molded by Father Gaston at Chitrabani. So thank you, Professor Chakravarti, the guest speaker today. You always inspire us, and that's why when we thought of this event, we thought of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Father P.J. Joseph, the director of Chitrabani, and Father George Bonadat, the director of EMRC, Kolkata. We wish Chitrabani continues to be the Bodhi tree for many aspiring media persons. I thank Father Jayapadi and Dr. Josephine Joseph, who were the sources of inspiration for young people to pursue their career in communication in Tamil Nadu. Father Myron Pereira, former JESCOM secretary and former editor of Jeevan, once spearheaded Jesuit communication. I thank three of you for taking time to join this meeting and sharing your reflections. Thank you, dear friends, for Brito Vincent and Father Lourdes. We were directed disciples and mentees of Father Gaston. Thank you for sharing all your meaningful memories of Gaston. I wish to thank all the Jesuits cutting across the state and the country participating in the meeting. Thank you, members of the Communication Commission, Jesuit Chennai Province, my colleagues in School of Media Studies, ISCOM, BMM, Kaushal Kendra, for supporting this effort, especially Professor Eugene, our coordinator, who works closely with the HOD, Dr. Irudayaraj, Mr. Adaikalasamy, our senior technical staff, who prepared the shorter version of the video and streamed this meeting. In a special way, I thank our former professor and former director of culture and communication and my friend, Professor Amal, who sat in the planning meeting and shared his thoughts and ideas on how this program should go. We wish to thank all of you who have participated in this meeting. As well-wishers of Gaston, Communication Commission, Chennai Province, and the School of Media Studies, Loyola College. We will continue to work together, and the spirit of Father Gaston will continue in the days to come in us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex Parimalam, for your wonderful speech and as well as vote of thanks. You remembered everyone in planning the meeting and so on. This is the last minute I'm taking to thank everyone who shouldered the responsibility of organizing this event. It was a very meaningful memorial meeting. People have already sent messages through WhatsApp that this initiative was well appreciated across the country, and the video message as well as the recorded message, people are interested in listening to the speeches. Some of the technical issues, many could not join. They were all sending messages. I don't know what happened. This is bound to happen in electronic media. Okay. So I was really inspired by Gaston Roberge, although I did not meet him personally, but I have come across his books. I have read and I have listened to the speeches and so on. Today's meeting really inspired me. Although he was a foreigner, he came to India and he really immersed in Indian culture. He was able to understand the Indian ethos, and accordingly, he changed his lifestyle as well as contributed a lot to Indian film cinema, Indian films and film criticism. He spent quite long years of his stay in India, and he has made his ministry very meaningful. Although he is no more with us, his spirit is with us, as many of the personalities sharing their memories about him. I was really moved. I was really feeling sorry that I could not meet him when he was alive. It was really inspiration for many of the communicators. Let us continue to become inspired by Gaston's works, and like him, we will also try to evolve our own Indian film theory and then we will contribute to the betterment of the society. With this, I conclude this meeting. I thank everyone who contributed directly or indirectly for the success of this memorial lecture and memorial meeting. A special thanks to Professor Venkatesh Chakravarti.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he is, after some time he said he will come to Pondicherry. That time we will meet him, he will come to Chennai.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
With this concluding words, let us conclude the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Father Irudayaraj.
Thank you very much.